Imagine waking up one day, fully aware of the life you've been living. Yet something feels off. It's as if you've been playing a role for so long that the mask has melded into your skin. The person staring back at you from the mirror is unfamiliar, like a stranger wearing your face. Your desires, your passions, your choices, are they truly yours? Or were they handed to you, shaped by invisible hands that never let you see the strings? You've spent years building a life that looks good on paper. You've followed the rules, climbed the social ladder, chased the approval of those around you. Maybe you've been rewarded along the way: success, admiration, comfort. But deep down, a question lingers in your chest, a nagging thought that gnaws at your peace. Am I truly living for myself, or am I living for others? It's a question that feels simple, even trivial at first glance. Yet, if you linger with it long enough, it begins to feel like a trap, a paradox that no one has the courage to address. Here's the troubling part. What if you've never been given the chance to live for yourself at all? What if, instead, you've been living for an ideal, a projection of who society tells you to be, who your parents want you to be, who your peers expect you to be? It's not that you've consciously chosen this path. No, it's more insidious than that. The choices you've made, the job, the relationships, the lifestyle, have all been influenced, shaped by societal expectations, unspoken norms, and the invisible pressure of fitting in. But here's the paradox. If you were living a life dictated by society's standards, are you even living at all? Can you truly be yourself if your identity is a collection of borrowed desires? Can you ever experience freedom if the very essence of who you are has been formed by external forces? Think about it. Every day, you engage in a silent transaction with the world. You trade pieces of your authenticity for acceptance. You play the game of life, but do you know the rules? Or are they rules you've never questioned, rules you've absorbed without even realizing? Consider the weight of this paradox. On one hand, society's expectations promise safety, stability, and belonging. But on the other hand, they keep you locked in a cage, telling you what you should want, what you should feel, and what you should achieve. The more you strive for these goals, the more distant you feel from your true self. The more you achieve, the emptier the victory becomes. You may find yourself asking, is this it? Is this the life you were meant to lead? Or is there something more, something buried beneath the surface, something beyond the social roles and external validation? You've been told that success looks like a promotion, a new car, a perfect family, a comfortable retirement. But does this definition hold true for you? Or have you simply inherited it from the world around you? Is your self-worth tied to the number of likes on your social media posts, or the praise you receive at work? If all of this were stripped away, if the applause stopped, the approval faded, who would you be left with? Now, let's take a moment to truly consider this. What if everything you've been told about success, about happiness, about fulfillment is wrong? What if, buried beneath the layers of social conditioning, there's another truth waiting to be discovered? A truth that has nothing to do with what others think, but everything to do with who you are, your authentic self. But here's the terrifying part. To uncover this truth, you must first face the uncomfortable reality that you've been living for others, not for yourself. You must confront the fact that you've been trapped in a cycle of validation, constantly seeking approval from sources outside of you. This is not just an external prison, it's an internal one. And until you acknowledge this, you will remain forever locked in someone else's idea of who you should be. So, what is the cost of living for society instead of for yourself? And how can you begin to break free from these invisible chains? These are the questions we must explore. But before we dive deeper, let's first understand the hidden forces that keep us tethered to this societal script. In the next section, we will examine the psychological and philosophical roots of this issue, shedding light on why we are so easily swayed by external expectations and why so few of us ever dare to live authentically. At the core of this paradox lies an uncomfortable truth. The life we think we're choosing may, in fact, be a series of unconscious decisions formed by forces far beyond our control. If you think back to your earliest memories, you may recall messages from your parents, teachers, peers, and the media that all hinted at one thing. This is the way life is meant to be lived. You were told what was good, what was bad, what was important, what was valuable. And often, these messages came before you even had the ability to question them. But why do we follow these external scripts so blindly? Why do we allow society's expectations to shape us, to dictate our sense of self? The answer, in part, lies in the psychological concept of social conditioning, a process that begins the moment we are born. We are taught to conform, to seek acceptance, to belong. These desires are so ingrained in our psyche that they almost become indistinguishable from our identity. Carl Jung, one of the foremost explorers of the human psyche, referred to this unconscious adherence to societal norms as the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to fit in with the world, the role we play to gain approval and acceptance. But here's the catch. Jung believed that the more we identify with the persona, the more we lose touch with our true self. We become so consumed by the need for external validation that we forget who we truly are beneath the mask. The result is an inner fragmentation, where the person we show the world is not the person we truly are. Jung's concept of the shadow further deepens this idea. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we repress because they don't align with society's expectations. These are the desires, impulses, and emotions that are considered unacceptable or immature, the parts of ourselves that, in the pursuit of social acceptance, we bury deep within. Yet, these shadow aspects don't disappear. They fester in the unconscious, subtly shaping our behavior and often leading to internal conflict. But Jung wasn't alone in recognizing the dangers of this societal conditioning. Friedrich Nietzsche, too, warned of the consequences of living according to the values imposed by others. Nietzsche famously spoke of the herd mentality, a state in which individuals mindlessly follow the crowd, abandoning their uniqueness in favor of conformity. According to Nietzsche, this herd mentality not only stifles creativity and individuality, but also traps people in a life devoid of meaning. Nietzsche's solution to this crisis was his concept of the Übermensch, or the Overman, a figure who transcends societal norms and creates their own values. The Übermensch is not concerned with the opinions of others, but with forging a life that is true to their inner calling. However, Nietzsche's idea is not just about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's about reclaiming one's authentic self, a self that is often buried beneath layers of social expectations. But what does it mean to reclaim this authentic self? How do we even begin to understand who we truly are when the lines between who we are and who society wants us to be are so blurred? The key lies in self-awareness. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existential philosopher, believed that to live authentically, we must first confront the existential truth that we are condemned to be free. Sartre argued that society imposes roles and definitions upon us, but at the end of the day, we are free to choose our path, to create meaning in our lives. This freedom, however, is terrifying, because it forces us to take full responsibility for our existence. In Sartre's view, most people run from this freedom, because it is easier to accept the roles society gives us rather than confront the burden of creating our own meaning. But this is not a simple process. In fact, it's one of the hardest things a person can do. To step away from the societal script and embrace the unknown is an act of profound courage. Yet, the cost of not doing so is even greater. Living for society without ever questioning its dictates is to live a life that is, as Viktor Frankl describes in his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, empty of meaning. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and existential psychiatrist, argued that the quest for meaning is the primary drive of human beings. But if we live according to the expectations of others, we forfeit our ability to find our own meaning, and thus our sense of fulfillment. The deeper psychological problem here is that, by living for others, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to develop our own sense of purpose. Our desires, our ambitions, and our very identity become shadows of external influence. As we accumulate accolades and possessions, we're often left feeling hollow, like an actor playing a part that was never written for them. We may have the trappings of success, but we miss the profound satisfaction of knowing we have lived a life true to ourselves. This is where the insidiousness of societal conditioning takes hold. It makes us believe that the pursuit of external approval will bring us happiness, when in fact, it only deepens the emptiness we feel inside. We seek out the approval of others, we conform to their values, and in doing so, we forget the one thing that truly matters: our own truth. So, how do we begin to break free from this conditioning? How do we untangle ourselves from the web of external expectations and rediscover our true selves? Before we attempt to answer that, we must first examine the unseen consequences of living in such a way. What happens when we continue to live for society instead of ourselves? In the next section, we'll explore how this hidden issue manifests itself in our daily lives and the profound consequences it has on our mental, emotional, and social well-being. It's easy to ignore the gradual erosion of our authentic selves, especially when society rewards conformity with promises of success and belonging. The consequences of living for others instead of for yourself are rarely immediately apparent. At first, everything seems to fall into place. Your career advances, your social circles widen, your material comforts increase. But beneath the surface, the subtle effects of this life built on societal expectations begin to accumulate, unseen but profoundly shaping your reality. Consider the psychological cost. The mind, in its search for consistency, begins to weave a narrative that aligns with external demands. What does this mean? It means that the more you conform, the more you lose touch with your inner voice. Your sense of self becomes fragmented, as if you are playing a character in a movie you never auditioned for. And while the script may seem safe and predictable, something deep within you knows that it's not yours. Carl Jung warned that neglecting the unconscious, the parts of ourselves that we repress to fit into society, leads to a psychic imbalance. The repression of the shadow doesn't simply disappear. It manifests itself in unconscious ways, through anxiety, depression, and even physical ailments. If you've ever felt a vague sense of dissatisfaction, a gnawing feeling that something's not right, it's likely the unconscious mind trying to signal that you're living out someone else's version of reality. This cognitive dissonance, the conflict between the true self and the mask, feeds an undercurrent of tension that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. But the mental consequences are just the tip of the iceberg. There are also the emotional costs. When you live for others, your emotional needs become secondary to the approval and validation of external forces. Relationships, both personal and professional, become transactional. You start to ask, what will this person give me in return for my conformity? It's no longer about genuine connection or mutual growth. It's about what's expected of you and how much you can gain by fulfilling that expectation. This dynamic is particularly evident in romantic relationships. The pressure to meet societal standards of beauty, success, and behavior often leads people to mold themselves into idealized versions of who they think they should be. The authentic connection that is supposed to form between two individuals becomes clouded by the desire to impress, to perform, to be validated. What is lost in this pursuit is the true essence of intimacy, the raw, unfiltered connection that arises when two people are able to show up as their authentic selves. Instead, what we see is a culture of relationship dynamics where both individuals wear masks, too afraid to reveal their vulnerabilities, too cautious to show their flaws. But perhaps the most tragic consequence of living for society is its effect on self-esteem. In a world where worth is often equated with external markers, wealth, status, physical appearance, self-esteem becomes something that is constantly negotiated. If your self-worth is contingent upon approval from others, how can you ever truly feel confident in who you are? Every moment of rejection, every criticism, every failure chips away at your sense of value, leaving you dependent on external validation to feel whole. This vicious cycle feeds itself. The more you live for others, the more you begin to doubt your own value, and the more you crave the approval that only deepens your dependence on society's measure of success. You begin to lose touch with your intrinsic worth, the kind of worth that is not reliant on anyone else's opinion. This is the great tragedy of living for society. You lose the ability to value yourself for who you truly are. But there are broader, societal consequences as well. When the majority of people conform to the same set of rules, the same patterns of behavior, the same desires, society itself becomes homogenized. The creativity, the diversity, the individuality that once made human society rich and vibrant is replaced by a sameness, a robotic following of the same script. This creates a society in which uniqueness is suppressed, and the loudest voices are those that conform most perfectly to the mainstream narrative. This is what Nietzsche called the slave morality, a morality that praises submission, mediocrity, and conformity over strength, individuality, and creativity. The problem is compounded by the cultural conditioning that perpetuates the ideal of the perfect life. The media, social media, and even our education systems feed us a narrative that tells us we must be constantly achieving, constantly improving, constantly seeking more. It's a treadmill that never stops, and the faster you run, the further you feel from the satisfaction you crave. Success in this framework is always just out of reach, and the moment you grasp it, it slips away, replaced by the next goal, the next benchmark. You can never truly rest. You can never stop to ask, is this even the life I want? As these patterns unfold in society, we become a collective of people who are constantly running toward an ideal that we don't fully understand, toward a destination that only offers more of the same. We become trapped in a collective delusion, one in which conformity and material success are the only markers of a life well lived. So, what is the cost of living for society instead of for yourself? The consequences are profound: mental fragmentation, emotional emptiness, a loss of authentic connection, a diminished sense of self-worth, and a society that has lost its vibrancy. The more we live for others, the more we lose touch with our unique essence. And the more we lose touch with that essence, the more we risk living a life that is not truly ours. But there is hope. If the consequences of living for society are so dire, then perhaps there is a way to break free from this trap. In the next section, we will explore how to begin this rebellion, how to shift your perspective, break free from the societal chains, and reclaim your authentic self. At this point, you might be feeling the weight of the problem, trapped in a life that was never yours to begin with, living by rules you didn't write, under expectations you didn't set. But this doesn't have to be your reality. There is a way out, a radical shift in perspective that can free you from the invisible chains that bind you to society's script. To begin the rebellion against societal conditioning, we must first understand the nature of freedom, and not just the kind of freedom we think we have when we follow the status quo. We need to explore authentic freedom, the kind that requires confronting the very beliefs that have kept us in this endless loop of conformity. Authentic freedom means the courage to reject the role that society wants you to play and to define your own existence, your own meaning. One of the most radical philosophical insights into this process comes from Friedrich Nietzsche. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduces the concept of the Übermensch, the overman or superman. The Übermensch is not someone who simply rejects societal norms for the sake of rebellion, but someone who actively creates their own values, someone who forges a path independent of the herd. Nietzsche famously declared that one must become who you are, a concept that is both empowering and terrifying. To become who you are, you must first acknowledge the deepest truth of your existence, that you are free. You are free to choose your thoughts, your actions, and your beliefs, despite the pressure from society to conform. However, this freedom comes with responsibility. The responsibility to challenge the expectations that have been imposed on you and to face the fear that comes with rejecting them. This is where the real work begins. One practical approach to breaking free from societal expectations is to embrace radical self-awareness. It starts by questioning every belief you hold, especially those beliefs that you think are unquestionable. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Where did this belief come from? Is it truly mine, or was it given to me by someone else? The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre argued that we are condemned to be free. This statement sounds harsh, but its power lies in its truth. Freedom is a double-edged sword. While it grants us the ability to shape our own lives, it also forces us to confront the existential reality that we are entirely responsible for our choices. There is no preordained path, no set script to follow. This responsibility can be terrifying because it removes the comfort of external validation. But it also offers something infinitely more valuable, the opportunity to create meaning, to carve out a life that is uniquely your own. The key to this is self-acceptance. To break free, you must stop seeking approval from others and start embracing yourself, flaws and all. Gabor Mate, a leading voice in trauma and addiction, suggests that many people seek external validation because they've never been taught to validate themselves. They look for love, approval, and affection from others, but never learn to give it to themselves. To truly break free, you must give yourself the permission to be imperfect, to be human. This is not an excuse for mediocrity, but a rejection of the constant pressure to be perfect, to fit into a mold that was never designed for you. As you begin to challenge the societal script, you may face resistance, not just from the world around you, but from within. The internalized voices of doubt and fear, the conditioned beliefs that have shaped your life, will rise up to remind you of the safety in conformity. These are the voices that tell you, what if you fail? Or, what will people think? These voices are not your own. They are echoes of societal pressure. To break free, you must dare to fail, dare to step into the unknown, and embrace the discomfort that comes with living authentically. One example of someone who broke free from the shackles of societal expectation is Malala Yousafzai, who defied the oppressive norms of her society to fight for girls' education. Despite facing immense danger and pressure to conform, she created her own path, guided by her inner conviction. Her rebellion was not just against external authorities, but against the fear and self-doubt that holds us all back. She became a living embodiment of Nietzsche's Übermensch, someone who rejected the script and instead created her own purpose, regardless of societal constraints. But breaking free from the societal mold is not an instant process. It requires sustained effort and a willingness to face discomfort. One of the most powerful practices in this journey is shadow work, a concept popularized by Carl Jung. Shadow work involves confronting the aspects of yourself that you've repressed or rejected, the parts that don't fit neatly into society's expectations. These might be your anger, your desires, or your flaws. By integrating these aspects, you reclaim parts of your authentic self that were hidden beneath the persona you've been wearing. Shadow work is not an easy journey. It requires courage to face the aspects of yourself that you've spent years running from. But it is the only way to reclaim your true essence. When you allow yourself to accept every part of who you are, your light and your darkness, you unlock a level of self-empowerment that is impossible to achieve by conforming to the roles others have set for you. It's also important to surround yourself with people who support your authentic self, not your persona. Relationships that are rooted in authenticity are essential for growth. Seek out connections with individuals who encourage you to question, to explore, and to challenge yourself. These relationships will help you remain grounded as you embark on your journey of self-discovery and self-creation. Ultimately, the rebellion against societal conditioning is not just about rejecting external norms. It's about reclaiming the power to define your own life. It's about living according to your own values, your own desires, and your own truths. It's about stepping into the freedom that is always available to you, if only you dare to embrace it. In the final section, we will explore the ultimate realization, one so profound that it will redefine how you see your life, your freedom, and your purpose. It is the insight that will make everything fall into place, offering you the clarity you've been searching for. This is the moment when you will truly understand the power of living for yourself and not for society. There is a moment in every life, a profound realization that changes everything. It doesn't come easily. It's not a simple epiphany that drops into your lap, but rather, it's a hard-earned insight that emerges when you've done the deep, uncomfortable work of confronting yourself. It's a truth that, when fully understood, reveals how deeply the search for external validation has shaped your entire existence, and how liberating it is to finally see beyond it. The ultimate realization is this: you are the creator of your own meaning. This is not just a philosophical statement. It is the deepest truth of human existence. All your life, you've been led to believe that meaning is something to be found outside of yourself, through achievements, possessions, relationships, and the approval of others. Society has told you that success and fulfillment are defined by its standards, that happiness comes when you meet its expectations. And for much of your life, you've played along, believing that these external markers of worth are the key to your own self-fulfillment. But here's the paradox. What if the meaning you've been searching for has always been inside of you? This insight is a revolutionary shift in perception. The moment you fully realize that you are the creator of your own meaning, everything changes. You no longer have to chase approval. You no longer need to fit into a mold that was never meant for you. Instead, you begin to see that the meaning you seek, whether in your career, relationships, or even your own personal development, can only be found through your own values, your own choices, and your own truth. This truth, however, requires you to confront a deeper, more uncomfortable reality, the concept of impermanence. All the external things we chase, the praise, the success, the material comforts, are fleeting. They are, as the ancient philosophers and spiritual teachers have long argued, transient. You cannot anchor your sense of self in things that are temporary, because when they inevitably fade, you will be left with nothing. It's this transient nature of life that causes so much suffering when we become too attached to external validation. Yet, there is profound freedom in accepting this impermanence. When you realize that external validation is a mirage, a fleeting illusion, you begin to detach from it. You stop measuring your worth based on others' opinions, and instead, you root yourself in your own essence, the only thing that is truly permanent. This realization aligns closely with the insights of existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre, who famously proclaimed that existence precedes essence, argued that we are all born without a predefined purpose. We are not given meaning by the world. We must create it for ourselves. This means that every moment of your life, every decision, is an opportunity to define your essence, to craft the narrative of who you are. The beauty and the responsibility of this is profound. You are not simply the sum of your past actions or society's judgments. You are what you choose to become in the present moment. But this isn't just an abstract concept. It has real, practical implications. When you embrace this truth, you stop living in fear of judgment. You stop worrying about whether you're good enough according to the standards set by others. Instead, you begin to own your identity. You learn to trust yourself, to listen to your inner voice, and to follow your intuition rather than constantly seeking approval from external sources. This is how you become authentic, not by trying to fit a mold, but by refusing to be defined by anyone else but yourself. The final, most powerful realization comes when you understand that you are free to choose. It's this freedom that people fear the most, because with it comes the responsibility to define your life. It's much easier to follow a set path, follow the rules, meet society's expectations, live within the boundaries of what is comfortable and familiar. But true freedom lies in stepping out of this comfort zone and into the unknown, into the realm of infinite possibilities. It's in embracing your own power to choose, to create, and to redefine the very meaning of your existence. This ultimate realization is not an abstract, philosophical argument. It is a transformative way of being. It's the point at which you stop being a passive observer of your life and start becoming its active creator. When you live for yourself, when you live authentically, you no longer need to seek validation from the world. Instead, you find peace in the knowledge that you are enough, exactly as you are, with all your imperfections, all your flaws, and all your contradictions. This is where true self-empowerment begins, in the moment you realize that you are the source of your own meaning, not the world around you. The poetic truth that follows this realization is that the pursuit of life according to other people's expectations is no longer necessary. You stop running the rat race. You stop chasing after accolades that do not feed your soul. Instead, you begin to cultivate a sense of fulfillment that is independent of external rewards. This doesn't mean you abandon ambition or goals. No, it means you pursue them for reasons that are uniquely yours, not because society tells you that you should. In the end, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to live authentically. This doesn't mean rejecting all of society's values, but it does mean questioning them, discerning which ones truly resonate with your essence, and discarding those that don't serve your highest self. This is how you reclaim your personal power and step into the life that is truly yours. So, the next time you feel yourself pulled by the external forces of society, remember, you don't have to play by their rules. You are the architect of your own existence, and your life is only limited by the boundaries you choose to accept. The truth is yours to discover, and the path is yours to create.